Hello, cucks!
And welcome
Welcome
the fuck to our video.
Our nightmare adventure.
I am May.
I am Azrael. I'm new here.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Good to meet you.
I'm gonna shake the wrist.
Now, I don't know if you boys and girls and ghouls and other kinds have heard, but there is going to be a Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark film
Yes.
that has nothing the fuck to do with the books.
It just has the bits in it, but those bits are just the Goosebumps movie. But again.
It's the Goosebumps movie, but again.
I hope you like the Goosebumps movie. Was there a second Goosebumps movie?
There was a second Goosebumps movie.
I hope you want to.
Yo, hot take, second Goosebumps movie, fucking ruled. First Goosebumps movie, second Goosebumps movie, fucking ruled.
So like Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed levels of rule, or would it just be like a
Yeah,
kind of
it was, I would call it a Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed situation. So all of this has sort of reignited a sort of spark in my brain about these books. And
Yeah.
These books here.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just kidding. This
No.
is a copy of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 4 that just came out that I have been reading.
It turns out our stand is reaching for wrong books. Put that on. Get it out of here.
It's the other
Get it outta
books.
here. Get it outta
I
here.
got rid of it.
Get out of here.
It's gone. These books.
These fucking tomes.
Now,
Of darkness.
these are the original prints of these that I got when I was a mere child.
Oh well.
Azrael,
May.
what are we doing today?
So, everyone, we are going to be doing a little reading for the children of the night tonight, and we're each going to read y'all a story, and we
For them?
for them and
Because
for
I'm
each
reading
other.
you one of these things.
No, I know. I'm also reading you one of these things, but they're here.
I thought it would be funny if I freaked you out with these books that we remember from our childhood. This book is demolished from me reading it. Me reading it so many times.
Nah, but see, the thing is, it's like that because it's just bursting with so much evil that it's falling apart.
Yeah, these books, evil, actually.
Satan.
Actually, before we read them, I would like to know, what is your experience with these books?
Kind of like my first introduction into scary things as a child because I was bereft of these things. I had never seen not a one horror film before I read these books. I had not seen not a one scary thing. And these awful bad books were my introduction to everything that is me now. So it's very interesting to be staring at these things that I like sat on like the elementary school floor and just stared at for hours.
And
was
look at
terrib-
you now.
I am a woman.
Scary Stories of the Dark turned me into a gay.
Scary Scory Taylor made me gay.
We should read them at the same time, simultaneously.
Oh yeah, we just make a nightmare of audio.
I know that the majority of the experience of reading these books is partially,
Entirely.
entirely the art.
Everything else, the stories are garbo, but the art is awful. So
Yeah, so we will be sporadically cutting to the art.
yes, it's going to haunt you like a fucking spirit.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I hope you like being absolutely mortified, because that's what's gonna happen
It's
next.
gonna just hit you like a car, but a spooky car.
Read me a tale.
Oh, spin you a yarn, ma'am?
Read me a story.
I'll read you a very short story.
Okay. I'm ready to be scared.
You should be. The Bed by the Window. The three old men shared a room at the nursing home. Their room had only one window, but for them, it was the only link to the real world. Ted Conklin, it's not a real name, who had been there the longest, had the bed next to the window. When Ted died, the man in the next bed, George Best, took his place, and the third man, Richard Green, took George's bed. Despite his illness, George was a cheerful man who spent his days describing the sights he could see from his bed. Pretty girls, a policeman on horseback, a traffic jam, a pizza parlor, a fire station, and other scenes of life outside. Richard loved to listen to George, but the more George talked about life outside, the more Richard wanted to see it for himself. Yet he knew
Murdered him.
Yet he knew that only when George died would he have that chance. Damn it, did you write this book?
I did.
He wanted to look out that window so badly that one day he decided to kill George. You ever wanted a window so bad you stab a man? He's going to die soon anyway, he told himself. What difference would it make?
So fuck it.
Turns out he's into eugenics.
He's gonna die soon anyway, so might as well just take his window.
Might as well just light him on fire. Whatever.
Yeah. We all go into the same place.
I mean,
it
come
ain't
on.
a race.
I mean, we're all old racist white men. We're all going to hell no way, so who cares? If he had an attack during the night and a nurse could not get to him right away, he had pills he could take. It's
Planning a murder.
This is an awful system. He kept them in a bottle on top of the cabinet between his bed and Richard's. All Richard had to do was knock the bottle to the floor where George could not reach it. A few nights later, George died just as Richard had planned he would, and the next morning, Richard was moved to the bed by the window. Now he would see for himself all the things outside that George had described.
I'm gonna stop you really quick.
Oh.
Are there not multiple rooms in this facility?
No, this is a weird temporal prison where all these men have been locked for all eternity.
Oh, okay.
After the nurse had left, Richard turned to the window and looked out, but all he could see was a blank brick wall.
He killed him for nothing.
Killed him.
He killed him for nothing.
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 And remember, this is a children's book about a man who murdered a man for a window. And then,
I'm fine. I turned out great.
And now let's get even gayer with story number 2.
Hey, that's me. Okay, so a little bit of context.
Oh,
This
wow.
particular story, and specifically its accompanying image,
Is the worst thing.
is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. This freaked me out so goddamn bad when I was a kid that like I would dream about this when I was sleeping. This made me very upset. The story is called The Thing. I think everyone agrees that this is probably one of the worst pieces of art in the book.
Mm-hmm.
He's looking right the fuck
that's
at
just-
you.
Yeah.
He's looking right into your soul. It's sort of horrible. Anyway, so I'm going to read The Thing, and partially the fun of this is getting over these old fears because I have not touched this one in a hot minute. So
Let's read it so he doesn't come in and touch us. Dabs.
Ted Martin and Sam Miller were good friends.
Real names.
Ted Miller. Ted Martin and Sam Miller, noted actual people.
Yeah.
Were good friends. They spent a lot of time together. On this particular night, they were sitting on a fence near the post office talking about one thing and another. There was a field of turnips across the road.
Would you look at that? Oh, a gaggle of turnips.
Suddenly they saw something crawl out of the field and stand up. It looked like a man, but in the dark, it was hard to tell for sure. Then, it was gone.
Oh.
But soon it appeared again. It walked halfway across the road and then turned around and went back into the field. Then it came out a third time and started towards them. By now, Ted and Sam were scared, and they started running. But when they finally stopped, they decided they were being foolish. They weren't sure what had scared them, so they decided to go back and get a better look. You know, like smart people.
Like white folk in every movie.
Pretty soon, they saw it.
Great writing.
For it was coming to meet them.
Ooh.
It was wearing black pants, a white shirt, and black suspenders.
This is just the hipster.
This is just, goth. Sam said, I'm going to try to touch it. Then we will know if it's real.
I announce my intentions out loud.
I'm gonna touch you.
Hello, sir. Do you mind if I touch your bosom?
He walked up to it, peered into its face. It had bright, penetrating eyes sunk deep into its head.
Okay.
It looked like a skeleton.
What does look like a skeleton mean, man? Something's either a skeleton or not a skeleton.
Ted took one look and screamed. And again, he and Sam ran, but this time the skeleton followed them. When they got to Ted's house, they stood in the doorway and watched it. It stayed out in the road for a while, then it disappeared.
Then they called a pizza, then they went to sleep.
A year later, Ted got sick and died. Toward the end, Sam sat up with him every night. The night Ted died, Sam said he looked just like the skeleton. Mother of fuck. So that's sort of the scariest Jesus. Okay, gotta keep that book a little.
Baby.
Yeah. Also, that story is freaky. But the cover of this always horrified me as well, just
it's,
sort of as
it's
a
just
break.
it's just a head. It's just a clown head. It's a
clown
head.
Skeleton man head coming out of the ground in a farmhouse.
He's a clown farmer.
What the fuck the point or this of?
He growing turnips.
What the hell?
What is this shit? What is that? What is that?
I don't know.
What is that? What is that?
We gotta both find another one now, because this went a little bit shorter than I anticipated. We were both going to read one, but now...
Yeah, but then I kind of forgot that these stories were about the length of like an essay in middle school, so...
Yeah, oh well.
Just an old woman developing a foot fetish.
Well, we've all been there. We kind of generally know which stories are going to be featured in the film.
I mean,
why don't we read some of those?
Oh, that's fucking amazing. Let's find the gross woman with the lack of boobs.
I found this one. That's like the best thing to do.
Yeah.
Is like somebody walks up. Oh, what are you reading? This.
I could just sing the Hearst song quietly in an embarrassing way.
Oh, we'd love to hear that. I cannot wait to eat a pizza after this.
I can't wait to eat. In general,
Dabs.
The Dream, starring Lucy Morgan, was an artist. She had spent a week painting in a small country town and decided that the next day she would move on. She would go to a village called Kingston. Oh. But that night, Lucy Morgan had a strange dream. She dreamed that she was walking up a dark carved staircase and entered a bedroom. It was an ordinary room, except for two things. The carpet was made up of large squares that looked like trapdoors, and each of the windows was fastened shut with big nails that stuck up out of the wood. In her dream, Lucy Morgan went to sleep in that bedroom because she's a fucking idiot. During the night, a woman with a pale face and black eyes and long black hair came into the room. She leaned over the bed and whispered, "This is an evil place. Flee while you can." When the woman touched her arm to hurry her along, Lucy Morgan awakened from her dream with a shriek. She lay awake the rest of the night, trembling. In the morning, she told her landlady that she had decided not to go to Kingston after all. "I can't tell you why," she said, "but I just can't bring myself to go there." "Well, then why don't you go to Dorset?" the landlady said. It's a pretty town. It isn't too far."
Is this your old lady voice?
It is. So Lucy Morgan went to Dorset. Someone told her she could find a room in a house at the top of a hill. It was a pleasant-looking house, and the landlady there, a plump, "Fuck you, Lucy," motherly woman, was as nice as could be. "Let's look at the room," she said. "I think you'll like it." They walked up a dark, carved staircase like the one in Lucy's dream. Oh, where's it going? In these old houses, the staircases are all the same, Lucy thought. But when the landlady opened the door to the bedroom, it was the room in her dream, with the same carpet that looked like trapdoors and the same windows fastened with big nails. That's just a coincidence, Lucy told herself. "How do you like it?" the landlady asked. "I'm not sure," she said. "Well, take your time," the landlady said. "I'll bring up some tea while you think about it." Lucy sat on the bed staring at the trapdoors and the big nails. Soon, there was a knock at the door. "It's the landlady with tea," she thought. not knowing how these things go. But it wasn't the landlady. It was the woman with the pale face and the black eyes and the long black hair.
The ghost lady!
Lucy Morgan grabbed her things and fled. So, okay, hold the fucking phone. To whoever, Alvin Schwartz, ma'am.
He's dead. So before you ask him a question, I would like you to know he is dead.
Get the Ouija board, I'm gonna yell at this motherfucker.
Oh, shit.
Okay,
Okay.
no.
This is based on folklore, so you're also yelling at culture.
I'm yelling at the dumb Welshman who told him this story. Okay, so, build up to the woman going to this big spooky house. Woman gets the big spooky house, ghost in her dream shows up. She just gets her shit and leaves, and that's the end of the story. Hey, did you remember in the movie Hostel when they got kidnapped and locked in the basement and then they left? Because that was a creepy basement, so they just left. Great story.
Well, that's the thing. I think these stories all are the same.
They are the same.
They
They
all
are,
have the
yeah.
same sort of structure, and the
Yeah.
way that they end is always like, and then either
Someone dies.
there's like a dumb twist, something like that, where they're just like, oh, caution and run.
Caution, run, ooh, big spooky, and then
Right.
the story's over.
Yeah.
Like,
So one or the other.
it's like a Stephen.
Typically.
It's like a Stephen King book.
but very short. Well, which is like why I've kind of questioned them adapting it into a movie.
Yeah.
Because it's like, how do you adapt stories that are like this that
Well-
aren't really stories, really? Like,
Well, the
really?
answer is what they also did with Goosebumps, where those books also didn't have stories per se. They just had set pieces and characters and just let that happen.
Yeah, they're just sort of like the stories are just like, this is scary, or the movie is gonna be like, this is scary. What if we weasel some sort of strange means to get this into a feature film? I think everybody wants this to be a really big deal, but
it's
like,
not.
I don't know how they gonna do it. But to continue on, let's
Please.
read one more story. No, we have to read two more because we have to read Harold because
We have to read Harold.
we gotta get the clicks.
We gotta
gotta
like,
put Harold in the thumbnail.
the fucking scarecrow right here, and us being like,
Yeah, we should take a. Wait, hold on. Let's do the thumbnail. Okay.
hold on.
Well, we'll digitally add Harold in.
Okay, good. Oh, good. I was
Okay,
gonna go
so-
get a scarecrow.
Oh, okay. All right, 3, 2, 1.
Oh, I want to kill myself.
Oh, me too. This story is called The Haunted House. One time, a preacher went to see if he could put a haunt to rest at a house in his settlement.
Zach Bagans.
This house had been haunted for about 10 years. Several people would try to stay there all night, but they always would get scared out by the haunt. So this preacher took his Bible and went to the house, went on in, built himself a good fire, and lit a lamp.
Just
sat
in the
there,
living room.
In the living room?
On the floor.
He sat there, reading the Bible. Then, just before midnight, he heard something start up in the cellar, walking back and forth, back and forth. Then it sounded like someone was trying to scream and got choked off. Then there was a lot of thrashing around and struggling, and finally everything got quiet. The old preacher took up his Bible again. But before he could start reading, he heard footsteps coming up the cellar stairs.
Oh no.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
He sat watching the door to the cellar, and the footsteps kept coming closer and closer. He saw the doorknob turn, and when the door began to open, he jumped up and hollered, "What do you want?" The door shut back easy-like.
Easy.
Easy-like.
Who wrote this? A mobster?
The door shut back easy-like. But, and there wasn't a sound. The preacher was trembling a little, but he finally opened the Bible and read a while. Then he got up and laid the book on the chair and went to mending the fire. Then the haunt started walking again and step up the cellar stairs.
That's what footsteps sound like.
Step. The old preacher sat watching the door, saw the doorknob turn and the door open. It looked like a young woman. He backed up and said, "Who are you? What do you want?" And then this happens to the reader.
This happens to the 8-year-old.
The haunt sort of swayed like she didn't know what to do. Then she just faded out. The old preacher waited and waited, and when he didn't hear any more noises, he went over and shut the door. He was sweating and trembling all over, but he was a brave man, and he thought he'd be able to see it through. So he turned his chair to where he could watch. He sat down and waited. It wasn't long before he heard the haunt start up again, slowly. Step, 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 closer and closer. Step, step. And it was right at the door. The preacher stood up and held his Bible out before him. Then the knob slowly turned, and the door opened wide. This time the preacher spoke quiet-like.
He whispered real softly.
Softly-like.
Real softly like.
He said, "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, who are you, and what do you want?" The haunt came right across the room straight to him and took hold of his coat. It was a young woman about 20 years old. Her hair was torn and tangled, and the flesh was dropping off her face so he could see the bones and part of her teeth. She had no eyeballs, but there was a sort of blue light way back in her eye sockets. And she had no nose on her face.
Is that me?
It's you. Then she started talking. It sounded like her voice was coming and going with the wind blowing it.
Females, am I right?
She told how her lover had killed her for her money and buried her in the cellar. She said if the preacher would dig up her bones and bury her properly, she could rest. Then she told him to take the end joint of the little finger from her left hand and to lay it in the collection plate at the next church meeting, and he'd find out who murdered her. It's getting good. And she said, if you come back here once more after that, you'll hear my voice at midnight, and I'll tell you where the money is hid, and you can give it to the church.
Why are they talking like this?
I'll tell you where the money is hid. The haunt sobbed like she was tired.
Women, am I right?
And she sunk down to the floor and was gone. She's just
Goodbye. Preacher took up his Bible.
The preacher found her bones and buried them in the graveyard. The next Sunday, the preacher put the finger bone in the collection plate, and when a certain man happened to touch it, it stuck to his hand. The man jumped up and rubbed and scraped and tore at the bone, trying to get it off. Then he went to screaming like he was going crazy.
As you won, man. That's not like a. That's not
like a
damning at all.
normal thing.
That's just if a bone was attached to you that wasn't yours.
Well, he confessed to the murder, and they took him on to jail.
Just in the middle of church. I killed it.
Ah, damn!
Take the bone, please.
Cool, murderers at church. After the man was hung,
They hung him.
The preacher went back to because of a finger.
The damning evidence of sticky bones.
The preacher went back to the house one midnight, and the haunt's voice told him to dig under the hearth rock. He did, and he found a big sack of money, probably with a dollar sign on it.
And like a dead Monopoly man, like clutching it.
Yeah, and where the haunt had held to his coat, the print of those bony fingers was burned right into the cloth. It never did come out.
Is that the end?
That is the end of the story.
What the fuck? What's the end of it? So I want to read Harold because that's actually a good story.
I think it's in this. Oh well, pages have just fallen out of my.
Oh no, that's where the demons come from. He's a weird boy with a big tongue.
He's kind of a twink.
He's a twunk.
He's a twunk.
Yeah.
Harold's a twunk.
Harold's a twunk.
Hashtag Harold's a twunk.
Harold's a twunk with his 3 chins.
Everybody comment that on the trailer for the movie.
Harold's a twunk.
Harold is a twunk.
Suck. Harold. When it got hot in the valley, Thomas and Alfred drove their cows up to a cool green pasture in the mountains to graze. Usually they stayed up there with the cows for 2 months. Then they brought them down to the valley again. The work was easy enough, but oh, it was boring. All day the 2 men tended their cows. At night they went back to the tiny hut where they lived. They ate supper and worked in the garden. And went to sleep. It was always the same. Then Thomas had an idea that changed everything. Here's gonna be the best non sequitur bullshit you've ever heard. Then Thomas had an idea that changed everything. Let's make a doll the size of a man.
Why?
It would be fun to make, and we could put it in the garden to scare away the birds.
It would be fun to make.
No, here's the thing. They didn't say, let's make a scarecrow. Let's make a doll of a man. It should look like Harold, Alfred said. Harold was a farmer they both hated, for no reason. They made the doll out of old stacks stuffed with straw. They gave it a pointy nose like Harold's and tiny eyes like his. Then they added dark hair and a twisted frown. Of course they gave it Harold's name.
They didn't say, let's make a doll that looks like that asshole farmer. They said, let's make a doll of a man.
And then they thought of how many men do they know?
What men do we know?
And they know one other man.
What if we made fun of that shitty man?
Hey, what's that one shitty man who could theoretically see the scarecrow? Yeah, let's make it about him, because fuck that guy, right? Each morning on... Oh, they already did it. Okay, cool.
They've done it.
They did it that night. Each morning on their way to the pasture, they tied Harold to a pole in the garden to scare away the birds. Each night they brought him inside so that he wouldn't get ruined if it rained. When they were feeling playful, I don't like that statement.
Let's make a doll of a man.
Let's make a doll of a man. They would talk to him. One of them might say, "How are the vegetables growing in the garden today, Harold?" Then the other, making believe he was Harold, would answer in a crazy voice. Let me do a crazy voice. Okay, you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Very slowly. They both would laugh, but not Harold. They're bullying
He's a scarecrow, you fucking idiot!
Whenever something that went wrong, they took it out on Harold. They would curse at him, even kick him or punch him. Sometimes one of them would take the food they were eating, which they were both sick of, and smear it on the doll's face. "How do you like that stew, Harold?" he would ask. "Well, you better eat it or else." Then the two men would howl with laughter and masturbate. One night, after Thomas had wiped Harold's face with food, Harold grunted. "Did you hear that?" Alfred asked. "It was Harold, Thomas said.
Thomas.
"I was watching him when it happened. I can't believe it." "How could he grunt?" Alfred asked. "He's just a sack of straw. It's not possible." "Let's throw him in the fire," said Thomas, "and that will be that."
Killed the doll.
"We need to murder the spirit inside of Harold."
Harold.
"Let's not do anything stupid," said Alfred. "We don't know what's going on. When we move the cows down, we'll leave him behind. For now, let's keep an eye on him." So they left Harold sitting in a corner of the hut. They didn't talk to him or take him outside anymore. That's really fucking rude. Now and then the doll grunted, but that was all. After a few days, they decided there was nothing to be afraid of. Maybe a mouse or some insects had gotten inside Harold and were making those sounds. So Thomas and Alfred went back to their old ways.
Back on my bullshit.
I'm getting back on my bullshit. Insert fucking Bugs Bunny holding up a pistol. Each morning they put Harold out in the garden, and each night they brought him back to the hut. When they felt playful, they joked with him. When they felt mean, they treated him as badly as ever. Then one night, Alfred noticed something that frightened him. "Harold is growing," he said. "I was thinking the same thing," Thomas said. "Thomas, maybe it's just our imagination," Alfred replied. "We have been up here on this mountain too long." The next morning, while they were eating, Harold stood up and walked out of the hut.
As you do.
He climbed up on the roof and trotted back and forth like a horse on its hind legs. All day and all night long he trotted like that. In the morning, Harold climbed down and stood in a far corner of the pasture. The men had no idea what he would do next. They were afraid. So they were just letting this happen and just being like, "Yeah, the puppet's doing some bullshit again."
The puppet is doing some bullshit.
Do you think they would stand outside and just watch him walk back and forth and be like, "Harold, we're sorry.
Yo, come on back. It's alright.
You can fuck us next time." They decided to take the cows down into the valley that same day. When they left, Harold was nowhere in sight. They felt as if they had escaped a great danger and began joking and singing, as you do. But when they had gone only a mile or two, they realized they had forgotten to bring the milking stools.
Continue.
Neither one wanted to go back for one of them, but the stools would cost a lot to replace their stools! There is really nothing to be afraid of, they told one another. After all, what could a doll do? They drew straws to see which one would go back. It was Thomas. "I'll catch up with you," he said, and Alfred walked on towards the valley. When Alfred came to a rise in the path, he looked back for Thomas. He did not see him anywhere. But he did see Harold. The doll was on the roof of the hut again. As Alfred watched, Harold kneeled and stretched out a bloody skin to dry in the sun.
my book. Well, shit. We
Well,
read some
shit.
stories
We
today.
read some book. We read some horror book.
So
Are you
now,
scared?
when anybody's like, "Yo, you are a dummy who don't read," we can be like, "Check out this video where we read book."
I've never heard anyone make the connection that they definitely fucked Harold for months and then he got sick of it and murdered one of them.
Hello.
Hello.
And
welcome to
the
the
credits
credit
of the video. Make
Make
sure to subscribe if you like this video. And like this video if you like this video. Also, you can support this channel on Patreon
down below in the description. Wow! I hate it.